Okay, so hello and welcome. My name is Jillian Bloomfield. I work for the Environmental Leadership and Training Initiative at Yale University, otherwise known as ELTI. And we welcome you today to this information session to learn more about the Tropical Forest Landscapes Online Certificate Program. This year-long certificate program offers a unique opportunity for environmental professionals from around the world to connect with the Yale School of the Environment to develop concrete skills, advance your careers, and explore science and solutions related to tropical land management from many different perspectives. And we're so pleased to be joined today by three current and past participants who've come to help share their perspectives on the program and how they've approached the practical project elements of the program. And I'll say your name if you want to activate your camera and give a little wave for a minute before we talk. So we have Cecilia Alcareza Laura from the World Wildlife Fund. Hi, Cecilia. We have
Hi, everyone.
Hi there. We have Rudolf Makhanu from Nature Kenya
Hello. Hi, everyone.
and Celine Salcedo-La Viña from the World Resources Institute.
Hi, everyone.
So we're so pleased that they could join us today, and we will hear even more from them in just a few minutes. And so today's agenda, we've divided this information session into 4 parts. First, I'll give a brief program overview. Then we'll hear from our panel of participants. Then open it up for question and discussion, and then we'll finish to close with some information on how to apply to the program. Some housekeeping for you all. We are recording this session and we'll post it to our YouTube channel, and you should get a message about that also after the session, probably in the next 1 to 2 days. And as we progress the information session, if you have any questions, please type them in the Q&A window of the Zoom webinar system so that you can share your questions and we can start to address them in the Q&A section. Also, I'm going to right now launch a poll which can help us hear a little bit more about where you're at in thinking about this program. So take a look at the poll and we'll share the results at the end. But I can already see many of you are here to learn about the program and thinking about whether it's relevant to you, and a couple of you actually started applications, so that's really exciting. So now what I'm going to do is give you this brief program overview. So the Tropical Forest Landscapes Online Certificate Program started in 2019. We are now entering the call for applicants for the 5th delivery of this year-long program. And over the course of the year, participants go through 4 8-week subject matter courses, a fundamentals course on ecological and social concepts, a people course focused on human dimensions and engagement, strategies course on land use planning and implementation, a funding course on financial concepts and tools. And throughout the whole program, participants are enrolled in a project course, what we call the Capstone course, in which you're relating the content to a site of personal or professional interest. And that's something for which our guests here today are going to talk more about what projects they selected specifically. And then we also offer an optional 1-week course in the field to complement the whole thing and bring people together to see conservation and restoration in action, meet with different stakeholders, and get to know each other as a cohort. So as part of this high touch 1-year program, it happens over the course of a full calendar year. It is designed to be part-time. So we say around 6 hours a week. Some weeks it's more, a couple weeks it's a little less. But the idea is that everyone who's taking the program is doing this in addition to personal and professional commitments. They're not leaving their jobs or needing to enroll in a full-time program like you would in some in-person programs. So it's meant to be part-time. And right now the program is in the English language, and we have other short courses offered by ELTI in other languages. So if you're interested in those, feel free to reach out to us also as part after the program, this session. So who's this program for? It's really for a wide variety of people. And we found in the 4 years of delivery so far, the audience is quite broad. So this includes staff members from government, NGOs, aid agencies, foundations, businesses, extension agencies, and academia, graduate students and recent graduates, landowners, farmers, ranchers, and community organizers, pretty much anyone interested in designing, implementing, and monitoring conservation and restoration initiatives. And as you can see from these charts here, the region that people come from for the program is quite broad and spread out around the world. And then also from sector. So the biggest two groups are nonprofit and private industry, but also from government and academia and other sectors. What do you do in a given week? You engage with content that's pre-recorded videos by different Yale professors, but also a whole range of different contributors from around the world. And so that's part of what makes this program really unique, is that we have not just the academia perspective, but also the perspective of people doing research and carrying out projects in many different countries. There's also readings, interactive presentations, and case studies. There's also interaction and feedback. So live discussions on Zoom, discussion boards that you post reflections to on a weekly basis, other opportunities for peer-to-peer exchange, and expert review of your assignments. And then finally, for this part, the program's designed for application. Throughout the whole program, every week you're asked to constantly be reflecting on how does what you're learning relate to your work and your interests. There are also guided exercises that help you put together projects and management plans and use different tools that you can get experience within the program and then use in your careers after the program. And you finish the program with in hand a document representing your capstone project and a presentation that you've given live for your classmates. There's also the optional field course, as I mentioned, which is a chance to head to one of ELTI's sites with our partners in the tropics. The photos here were from our 2020 course in the Philippines. And this year we're offering courses in Panama, Colombia, and the Philippines. The main benefits that have been communicated back to us from the participants themselves, and we'll hear more from our participants in a couple minutes, is that people have been able to gain a holistic perspective from all sorts of different disciplinary viewpoints. And then that they've been able to gain practical skills by using the different tools and techniques presented in the program. Access to a global network. So there's the network of contributors, as I mentioned, from all over the world, but there's also the network of participants themselves coming from all over the world. And then the extent to which this program helps invest in the learning success of the participants. You're assigned mentors like myself and like other members of our team who are with you every step of the way to help make sure that you are on track, that you're supported. And then there are lots of other ways that we try to connect you with the different resources and tools to be most successful in a long year-long program like this. What happens after the program? Participants have communicated that they have applied new tools to their work. They write projects or funding proposals. They are able to implement their capstone project, improve projects, so including more technical strategies or enhancing a plan for social inclusion, and changing positions or field of work. And you can see along the side, there were some webinars we did last year in which we had participants present live over for our webinar series on what they've done since graduating the program. So we're happy to connect you with recordings of those sessions as well. And then also some that have started a new educational program or used this both with work and with education, a lot of people have used the program to springboard into a different position or a different career. So the big question is money. That always comes up. So we want to put it out there up front. The tuition for the program is $6,000 US. This includes 4 8-week online courses and the year-long capstone, unlimited access to all the online course materials, support from the mentors throughout the program, face-to-face online interaction with experts, and personalized expert advice on your coursework. The optional field course is an additional $2,000, and that includes a 1-week immersion experience in the tropics, all course materials, site visits, field exercises, and facilitated activities, room and board and transportation in the country where the field course takes place. And there are scholarships available. So for scholarships, we have partial scholarships available on a competitive basis. When you fill out your application to the program, you also have the option to fill out a scholarship application. And there are different categories of scholarship that cover 25 to 75% of the tuition fee. So there's the Leadership and Impact scholarship, a career development scholarship, or a general scholarship. So you would select which of those you qualify for and are interested in as you're applying, and there are essays you fill out for those scholarships in particular. There's also this exciting 3 Cairns Fellowship. This is made possible through a support through the Yale School of the Environment, in which they are fully sponsoring the online tuition for the 3 Cairns Fellows. So this is specifically for individuals working on climate solutions in the global south. And to be eligible, you need to have primary citizenship from a country in the global south, professional or academic experience relevant to climate solutions, and be actively working on climate solution implementation. So feel free again to contact us if you have questions in this regard. And you can fill out the 3 Cairns Fellowship application as you're filling out your program application also. My last slide for this part are some important dates. So applications opened on January 11th. Then we are having our early application deadline on March 1st. And what this means is that if you apply by March 1st, you will be notified ideally before the end of March about your application, and then through that you'll be able to make your decisions or line up your funding or all of that earlier. Our final application deadline will be April 7th, and that will the applications that come in for that will be reviewed on a rolling basis. And the program is set to start on June 26, 2023. So with that, I'm going to pause my share and move to the participant panel. So if our participants, yes, you all have your screens up. So that's great. We'll get to questions from the Q&A at the end, so feel free to keep putting those in. Now we'll have a chance to hear from our panel of participants. So we have Cecilia, Rudolf, and Celine. And we'll first start with some introductions and big picture advice from our panel, and then we'll hear more about the capstone projects of each participant. So I'll first start with Cecilia, our first guest who participated in the program from 2021 to 2022. Cecilia is working as the manager of corporate engagement in she's the Southwest Amazon Landscape Lead for the World Wildlife Fund in the U.S. Cecilia, we'd love to hear from you a bit more about yourself, your experience in the program, and your perspective 9 months later.
Hi, everyone. As you said, Gillian, my name is Cecilia Alcoreza. I am originally from Bolivia, and my background is in forestry. I'm forest engineer. I studied in Chile, so I had an experience in temperate forest mainly. So this was an amazing opportunity for me to learn more on tropics. Currently, I have worked as manager for our pulp and paper sector engagement work in the forest program in the US. And after this certificate program, I'm also playing this Southwest Amazon lead role, as you mentioned, where I manage the US forest conservation and nature-based solution agenda in these landscapes. I've worked in this organization for the past 11 years, playing different roles. I started a while ago in Chile, then playing a role as regional pulp and paper expert for South America. And through these 11 years, I also learned a lot on forest conservation, forest certification, and restoration was part of my current work, but I didn't have at that time a formal training on restoration. So I decided to study this training for that, to be more accurate in the way I'm implementing this type of projects in different regions all around the world, but by now more focused in South America and North America, but also with this, I am aiming to implement this type of project in Asia. I would say that the program surpassed by far all my expectations. For someone who has been working in the conservation for a conservation organization for many years, the program gave me a different and more robust perspective of how to design and plan a conservation and restoration project. The program provided me a bunch of environmental, social, and finance foundations. As you may know, all three sustainable criteria needed today to address effective conservation and restoration initiatives, knowing the challenges that we are facing as humans to keep keep our planet alive. The program content was an immense benefit for me. It helped me to move my career to different conservation arena. As I mentioned before, I was more focused on one sector, which was working with the pulp and paper sector, which has some interaction with restoration initiatives, mainly in Brazil and Chile. But now, when I took the certification program, I was more focused to strengthen my knowledge on tropical forest restoration, which I was not trained before. But in the in-depth knowledge and skills that I acquired from this certificate program allowed me to start a new working pathway. Now I am supporting the planning and designing of inclusive conservation projects in the Southwest Amazon region, which is the south of Peru and the western part of Bolivia, related to other effective mechanisms with a more holistic approach. So by now I could combine different efforts to bring back forests in those areas through restoration projects, bring back the connectivity for key and emblematic species in South America, which is the jaguar. So by now I feel more confident to implement my work properly, but also be mentoring my colleagues in new geographies where restoration initiatives are just starting. What I could say around an insight for you, I would say that as much as possible, make effective use of all of the resources of this program offers to you. One of the main ones that I found is that you will be supported by knowledgeable and really passionate professionals and mentors that will guide you through this fascinating journey. And this is something that I want to emphasize. This, for me, was a fascinating journey that I hope you will start very soon. On the other hand, I would suggest to be very active in communicating during the live sessions, because this is the space where you will learn a lot and learn from different experiences around the world. So that will give you a much more understanding of the challenges and the opportunities of working in this type of projects. And this is how you will best, and this is also how you will best trigger the best of your peer-to-peer learning. This exchange will also be a fundamental part of this program. And finally, I would suggest you to engage deeply with your Capstone project. It gives you hands-on experience designing your own project, and you will put into practices everything that you learn, which I found extremely important when I was attending this certificate program.
Thank you,
Back to
Cecilia.
you, Gillian.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Cecilia. And we'll come back to you also to learn more about your capstone project in just a few minutes. So we wanted to go to Rudolf for similar questions. Rudolf Makhanu is currently enrolled in the program as a participant. So this is the 2022-2023 delivery. And Rudolf is a program coordinator for the Forest Landscape Restoration Initiative at Nature Kenya in Nairobi, Kenya. So Rudolf, similar questions for you. We'd love to hear a bit about yourself, your experience in the program so far, and your main piece of advice for our potential applicants.
Thank you, Gillian. My background is in natural resource management and environmental planning, and I have 15 years experience in restoration work within the forest sector. And I have worked at national level coordination, and currently I'm coordinating this project, which is funded by the Global Environment Facility and United Nations Environmental Program. And it's based in Tana Delta. It's the largest wetland in Kenya. And I think because of the different interests for use, it has been degraded. And previously, before joining the Nature Kenya, I worked for Pan-African Climate Justice Alliance on energy. And then before that, I worked with Endangered Wildlife Trust. And then for about 9 years, I was with the East Africa Wildlife Society. So that has sort of given me that kind of background. But then coming to this course, I think it has been an eye-opener. And as I was mentioning, the term certificate might give you a wrong impression, because actually what you get is slightly more than that. And so my work entails partnering with different organizations, including the government, and also working with the other civil society organizations and community groups, because we know that for us to be able to restore nature, one important thing which I think I have learned from the project is for you to understand how nature works. For you to be effective in restoration, you need to understand how nature works. And I think we've learned that in our course. And also it's important for you to understand the needs of the people, because conservation and restoration is driven by the people that interact with those resources. So you need first to find a way where you engage the people, so you meet their needs, and then in that way, then you will be driving towards sustainability. But again, a very important thing that helps in restoration is understanding financing. You have to mobilize resources, and then monitoring and evaluation. So I've gained a lot of knowledge from that. And I think when I did my first course, this is my second course. The first course was on FLR, Forest and Landscape Restoration. I co-authored a guide on community sustainable community living in rural villages. So the guide is being utilized across the country. It was translated in the local language, and it has been used on radio. Okay, so these are important skills, and we think the impact which we're having on the communities, I think it is very significant. So moving forward, I think I will say that it's important for you to have a very strong passion to learn new skills. So the strong passion will drive you into learning. And as my colleague has mentioned, unless you're willing to interact, listen, ask questions, if you are fearful, you will not learn. So fear is something which you need to deal with, because fear will make you not ask questions. You will not interact with your colleagues, and then you will have missed opportunities. And personally, I picked something from peer-to-peer learning, where when joining the course, I had a very strong interest to learn about presentation skills. And actually, I got it through mentorship. And Gillian here mentored me, and nowadays my presentations are much better than they were before. So I'm very proud that I've gained these skills and I'm practically applying them, because the partners that are supporting this program have mentioned that we might get an extension. So the skills that I've learned, we are putting them into practice, and especially the fact that biodiversity conservation enhances resilience. So I think when you understand how nature works, and then people needs, because you cannot force people to conserve. There must be something they are getting. So the people cause, the strategies thing, and I think the conceptual model has been one of the outstanding things for me, because I'm able to design a project, think through. And one of the things I never used to understand was when I was being told to flip the causal, the causal chain into a results chain. To me, I couldn't understand that, but now I understand what it is, and I'm able to, prepare a monitoring framework. So I think I'm thankful that the things I didn't know, now I do know, and the willingness to learn, I think, has been able to help me. So thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rudolf. And yeah, it's so wonderful to hear from all of you guys. And we'll hear from Celine in just a second too. But that peer-to-peer sharing, as you can hear already from even just two of our participants, the content you receive in the program is only one part. All of the participants and now the full body of alumni come with such a wealth of experience and insight and practical knowledge to share with each other. And so that's really important. So next, I'll hand it back to Celine, Salcedo-La Viña, who is also participated same year as Cecilia. Celine is a senior associate for the Land and Resource Rights Initiative and Center for Equitable Development at the World Resources Institute. And so same questions for you, Celine, a bit about yourself, your experience in the program, your perspective 9 months later, and your number one or two pieces of advice for potential applicants.
Yeah, thank you, Jillian, and hello, everyone. Again, I'm Celine Salcedo-La Viña, and I'm a senior associate at the World Resources Institute. For those who are unfamiliar, WRI is a global research organization working on the intersection of environment and development. We have offices in 12 countries, including here in Washington, D.C., where I'm based, although culturally I'm from the Philippines. I am with the Equity Center, one of 4 institutional cross-cutting centers that works with around 7 or 8 programmatic areas within WRI. I'm sorry about that phone. Comes at the most inconvenient time. And I do have a legal background, and my work focuses on Indigenous peoples and local communities, their rights to land and natural resources, and their participation in the governance thereof, both in terms of collectively owned lands and individual tenure and participatory rights of community members, particularly Indigenous and rural women. So some of the related issues I am currently working on are those related to nature-based solutions and the different approaches under this umbrella, such as forest landscape restoration, natural climate solutions, and payments for ecosystem services, and the implications of these proposed solutions on the livelihoods, the lands, the culture, and the well-being of indigenous peoples and local communities. So this segues into what I got out of the program, which I would say, like Rudolf and Cecilia, is not only what I expected from Yale, but so much more. It was very helpful and valuable for someone like me with a non-technical background. First, Jillian gave us a snapshot of what the curriculum looks like, and I'll give you my take on how it worked for me. So I'll start with the content. I like that the curriculum was divided into discrete but interrelated modules that span all the aspects of forest programming, from the ecological aspects, which was to me very new, the social and people dimensions, which I'm familiar with, but I learned so much more. The specific strategies for planning and implementation and designing projects on the ground, and the finance aspects, which is always sort of in the background, but actually is very important, as you may probably well know. And so each module provided me a broad and comprehensive overview, and it had curated materials for additional reading, which you can go back later if you'd like to dive deeper into the topic. So, and alongside the thematic modules and all throughout the year, you have the Capstone course, where you learn to design a full conservation and restoration project. It can be intimidating for someone like me who hasn't done this previously, but the paced guidance really help break it down into manageable pieces. And next, the weekly assignments. There can be a lot, and it includes posting your reflections based on the video lectures and readings in a discussion board with other members of your cohort. Not just posting, but reacting to at least 2 of the reflections from your classmates. I very much enjoyed reading the views of my classmates because we come from very diverse backgrounds. I got a wide range of perspectives and learned so much from others. Another way that I learned from my cohort is through a cool feature of the breakout rooms during the live sessions. So where we get to see each other virtually at least, and we are able to exchange ideas. And sometimes I feel like the breakout sessions could be longer because when you're just starting to warm up and everybody's like excited to talk, it's time to go back to the plenary. So we've been suggesting like maybe we can have additional breakout sessions. I've been suggesting that during my time. And then there's the optional field course, as Jillian pointed out. It was postponed during Cecilia and my time because of COVID, but we have the chance to do it this year. For me, this is a wonderful opportunity to see some of the concepts, the theoretical concepts that I learned and apply them on the ground. Finally, I would say that the program allowed me to improve my network in the community of practice. ELTI will jumpstart a WhatsApp group for the cohort. And I encourage all program participants to join and actively participate in this group. Our WhatsApp group continues to be very active to this day. I'm sorry about that. People post queries and others reply with suggestions, very helpful and real and practical suggestions. Folks share events that are upcoming, new and interesting books. And people say, I am going to be in this conference. If you're going to be there, it would be a good time for us to get to know each other in person. So it's a very good way of keeping learning, to keep learning, and to continue the connection with your cohort. So lastly, for insights that I would share to prospective participants, Again, I repeat that for someone like me who's focused on the policy, legal, and social side of forestry and natural resource governance, the course deepened rather my understanding of the value and role of forests and nature to indigenous peoples, local communities, and to everyone, as a matter of fact. It also made me appreciate the complex interactions of biophysical, cultural, economic, financial, political, and social factors involved in restoration, conservation, and sustainable forest management. Um, and the key insight is that the so-called win-win or win-win-win solutions must be viewed in these interventions with a healthy skepticism. So I'll stop there. Thank you, Jillian.
Thank you, Celine, and you can give the presentation next year because that was wonderful.
Thank you.
For the big overview of the program. That's really wonderful. And so such an honor to hear from you guys and your perspective as well. And you're doing such wonderful things out on the ground and with partners around the world. So again, I'm just in awe of you guys too, the three of you and all of our participants. So thank you for sharing these points. A big part of the program is this capstone project that we've mentioned over and over again. And from moment one, the participants are encouraged to think about how the content they're learning applies to a specific landscape or region. And a big question that comes up amongst applicants or potential participants is, what is the project and what is it like? And can we see some examples? And so to give you a glimpse into these projects, I'd like to ask each of our three panelists to share very briefly about your projects. If you can say what you focused on and why, and for those of you who finished the program, if any of the aspects of your project either have been implemented or you've learned from to do something else after the program, or how it's impacted you would be really helpful. And so I'll share my screen with each of our panelists have prepared a slide to give an example for their projects, so that thank you so much, and I'll share that right now, starting with Celine. So here, let me share that, and then you can go ahead and introduce your project. And so we want to spend like about 1 or 2 minutes each so that we have time for a couple questions.
All right. Just to clarify, Jillian, 1 or 2 minutes?
Yes.
Okay, wow, okay. So as you can see from the slide, my capstone project, the title, Restoring the Andes Amazon in Peru for Biodiversity Conservation, Ecosystem Services, and Resilient Communities. For those who are curious, the bird, the photo of the bird is, this is the Andean cock of the rock. With its bright red plumage, it's considered the national bird of Peru, whose population is on decline. So underscoring the need for restoration in a visual form. Quick background why I chose the project. This capstone was intended to feed into a larger proposed project for the conservation and restoration of 2 highly biodiverse landscapes in the Peruvian Andes Amazon. One of them was the Tambopata Inambari landscape, spanning more than 3.5 million hectares and spanning several ecoregions like high altitude alpine grasslands, montane cloud forest, humid forest, and savanna. So the capstone focused on the montane cloud forest called the Yungas. It represents one of the largest contiguous expanses of protected montane forests in the world, with more than 3,000 species of flora and more than 200 species of fauna. A large part of the landscape is under national parks. And these areas under national parks are difficult to access because of the steep terrain and, the rainfall, the amount of rainfall that falls. But beyond the protected areas, there's significant land clearance. Hence the, why this type of project would be useful. The drivers of the land clearance would be agriculture and extractive, specifically gold mining and illegal logging. And agriculture also includes illegal coca planting. And so agriculture, both subsistence and commercial, extractives, both illegal and illegal. So, and of course, much driven by poverty and migrant intrusion, coupled with weak governance and weak state presence throughout the region. So what to do? The overall vision was to ensure, again, healthy biodiversity, resilient ecosystems, and thriving and resilient communities, indigenous people. So we had, the project had 3 targets: restoration, biodiversity conservation, and sustainable livelihoods. So in designing the project, let me just speed talk through this. I systematically applied the suite of analytical tools that we learned from the Capstone project. Again, this will be presented in discrete pieces so as not to make them overwhelming. I will not go into detail, but just a couple of examples. One, for example, target selection is one of the steps you do where you identify the key biological, ecological, and socioeconomic elements that you need to address in order to be successful. For example, you know, areas impacted by climate change, the ecosystems that are degraded, or species that are rare, in decline, vulnerable or emblematic, and the livelihoods that can be changed in order to improve outcomes. The other thing for the capstone is that you will be taught or presented or provided with a suite of tools that you can use from external organizations. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel. For example, for my threats assessment, I used a tool from Cecilia's organization, the WWF. And then for stakeholder analysis, I used a tool from the TNC and the WCS, World Conservation Society, and I forget what TNC stands for. I'm sorry about that. So the exercises ultimately lead you to the development of a conceptual model, which visualizes the project's logic and theory of change from the project vision, priority targets, direct threats, and contributing factors, as well as opportunities that influence the achievement of these targets and the strategies that you can do to achieve those targets. And another thing I learned, as Rudolf mentioned earlier, is how to develop a monitoring framework in terms of establishing, very practical things like indicators, developing a results framework, developing a causal chain, and capturing the connections between each project strategy and the Nature Conservancy. Thank you, Rudolf. I'm blanking because of how I need to speed into this. So the expected outcomes and the anticipated income. So I would just say finally that it was very useful to put into practice that what we learned as well from the funding module. And it was my first time to develop a funding plan and budget. The program will most certainly challenge and push you. And I would caveat that to say that push you in a gentle way. And then that you will get as much as you put in for the program and the capstone. Thank you. I hope that was coherent.
Yes, thank you so much, Celine. And as you mentioned, like every step of the way, the Capstone project implements new tools that give you experiences drawn from these different organizations, so that then it's useful not only for putting together the project itself for potential application, but also for use in different ways after the program. So thank you for walking us through that, because it's really an important part of what we're trying to achieve. So now we'll go to the slide from Rudolf. Go ahead.
Thank you, Gillian. So the Capstone project that we are focusing on, I say we, because I think ours, I have been lucky, I have a partner, because you realize for some students, they do partnering. You can identify a person to partner with instead of doing, a hypothetical project. So for myself, I partnered with a colleague from France. So it focuses on enhancing wise use of the Tana River Delta. The delta is the largest delta in Kenya, and The aspects you can see in that is we want to enhance sustainable, sustained ecological integrity, because it derives from the aspect of ecosystem-based adaptation. So once you have, strong ecosystems, then it provides the needed ecosystem services, provide those resources. And then we are trying to balance livelihoods and economic prosperity, as well as the current and future generations. So the reason we picked on that is that, currently because of climate change, we're having strain on biodiversity. So these are very important natural resource. It's a Ramsar site. Tana Delta is a Ramsar site. It's a global biodiversity hotspot, and it is also a key biodiversity area. So in terms of biodiversity conservation, it has a lot of significance. But again, it is an important resource for communities to rely on. So there is an aspect of balancing livelihood. And the issue we are focusing on addressing is how do we ensure that the livelihood is in a manner that it does not degrade the natural resources. So in terms of the targets we are looking at, actually there are 5 main targets. Because we have dams upstream, so the dams are affecting the natural flooding regime. And the communities downstream rely on these floods for flood precision farming. So in a way, you will want to ensure the development does not affect livelihood. So the other thing is a stable population of red colobus, because the area has very important and critically endangered species, primates. 2 primates are globally endangered. So the use of natural resources has affected the habitats for these primates. So we will want to see how the population of these primates can be restored through wise use of those resources. And also mangrove restoration. There is a lot of mangroves in that area. And globally, mangroves are very important for, carbon sequestration. But then the utilization of those resources also affects that biodiversity. And then lastly, we have a lot of conflicts that arises because of resource use. And we've had ethnic clashes, people fighting over resources. So apart from the area being a very important biodiversity zone, we have pastoralists who come from very far, because the area traditionally it has been a dry season grazing area. So when it's dry, you find a lot of livestock coming from about 100 kilometers to the delta. So how do you balance that so that you ensure there is carrying capacity and there is no overstocking? So you notice in our project, we are balancing to ensure there is sustainable utilization. We ensure there is, biodiversity conservation so that there is that resilience. And then we want to ensure that there is peaceful coexistence. So probably those are the things I want to put across, that when you are designing your project, you need to look at those different elements. If there are conflicts, how do you ensure there are no conflicts? So that you're not just focusing on biodiversity conservation, yet we have resource use conflicts. And also the aspect of peace building. Without peace, you cannot do restoration. So peace building is also very important. So I leave it at that, only to mention that you need to look at the different aspects in terms of the issues affecting nature and also the priorities that affect people. And if there are conflicts, you need to integrate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Rudolf. And so we'll go to Cecilia for a presentation of your capstone project. I want to mention we're getting close to the hour. We'll keep going to let Cecilia have your chance. And also, I'll stay a few more minutes to answer some of the questions that have come up, especially those about the selection of the project and the scholarships and a bunch of other questions that have been coming in. But if you have to go that at the hour, that is fine. And we're also recording this session and we'll post it to YouTube and send it out via email after this. Without further ado, I'll hand it over to Cecilia to present your capstone project.
Thank you, Gillian. Well, my capstone project was a long-term forest landscape restoration initiative located in Santa Maria do Doce River landscape. As you can see in the map, this is a real project, and that we started at the same time the COVID pandemic started back in 2020. When I started this certificate program, I decided to focus my attention on one of the three landscapes that we had selected for this forest landscape initiative in the state of Espiritu Santo, which has an area of around 355,000 hectares, which is quite big, but the project was a largest area. This FLR project hinged on the existing structures and institutional frameworks to strengthen and scale up restoration efforts through a collaborative process involving multiple stakeholders groups to ensure coordinated restoration, landscape planning, and intervention toward this integrated landscape approach. At that time, imagine it was difficult to be all together, so it was a big challenge to get the perception and aspiration of all the stakeholders because of the crisis that we were all living at that moment. But we made it. We tried to do a different type of conservation. So I decided to take this as an example to work on this effort in Espiritu Santo. This initiative is aiming to reestablish the ecological integrity to enhance human well-being and degraded in this highly degraded landscape through restoration and improve sustainable agriculture and forestry practices in rural properties. At that time, when we started this project with our corporate partner, we were more focused on thinking to do ecological restoration. But when we learn more about what the people need, what the people want, this opportunity opened us our eyes to do more for people. That is why the title of this is For Nature and People. So at the end, what we end with this project, it is with this initiative that is currently under development. I could say that all the information that I prepared for this particular landscape was used in a 75% or perhaps more to feed the other landscape or to feed the analysis and to complement what my colleagues in WWF Brazil were developing for this project. So we recently present the Forest Landscape Restoration Project to a larger number of potential funders. And we are happy to say that by now we have at least one network funding, which is we will soon implement restoration of interventions over there. And also we have a larger investment that was based on the effort that we made all together through this project. The Capstone project and the whole detailed information that the information, the detailed understanding of the landscape, the history of the landscape was part of the Capstone project. So made me understand the challenges, but also the opportunities that we have when we implement this type of restoration projects. So I will show you a couple of links where you will see where we are with the project, and announcement, for example, of where we are with the financing and bringing more resources for this initiative. So we hope in the short or in the midterm, we will scaling up our efforts and see the impacts on the ground of what we have been doing. So this restoration, this capstone project was fundamental for me to be able by now to be more confident when I talk with funders, with my corporate partners, to promote the type of work that we are developing in this priority landscape for the WWF. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cecilia. So we are right at the hour. That was perfect timing. As I mentioned, I'm going to stay a few minutes extra to address some of the questions. If our panel, if any of you can, that would be great. If you have to go do other things for the amazing work that you do around the world, it's fine, feel free. But before everyone else heads out, I just want to share real quickly that you can go to our website, Tropical Restoration Certificate at yale.edu/admissions, and I'll put that in the chat in a second, for all the different application requirements. And so that will tell you how to apply. And as you're filling out the application, you can also apply for these scholarships and fellowships that I mentioned earlier in the presentation. And so that is the most important web link that we want to make sure you have. And then I'm going to pass. You can review the different application requirements on the website. And some tips for you: review all the requirements before you begin. Contact your professional reference ahead of time so that they have time to put it together. Pay special attention to the essays. That's really where you can shine, where we can see, and our review team can see who you are and how this program relates to your work and what you're hoping to do. And then contact Tropical Certificate at yale.edu for any questions about the program, about the application process, about the projects that you're interested in, anything else that you have in mind. Just write to us at Tropical Certificate at yale.edu, and we'll do our best to try to connect you with the right people to help get your questions answered. And so, as I said, I'll stay a few minutes and answer some questions, but I want to formally give a huge round of applause and thank you to our panel for coming today, for sharing all of your insights. It's so inspiring to me and meaningful, I'm sure, for our people around the world logging in today and those watching the recording to hear all about your amazing work, what you're doing, what you got out of this program, and how you've related what you've been learning to a specific capstone project. So thank you all again.
Welcome.
So I do see some questions, as I mentioned. I'll start to address so that for those of you who wanted to get some of those questions answered. One of the questions is, will it be on our part to opt for a specific subject instead of one in the syllabus or otherwise? And so if I misunderstood, feel free to clarify your question. But the main answer I would have is the syllabus of the program, I would say by and large, is pretty set and formed, and then we adapt it every year based on the feedback from all of the different participants and their course evaluations, as well as new exciting things that are coming up in the field. That's the main primary content. The types of things that there are other parts where you opt in. So as Rudolf mentioned, we're trying to give space in each of the courses for peer-to-peer sharing and peer presentations where the participants can share more about their work and what's interesting to them. And so that's one part where you get to direct the material. There's also readings and assignments where you could always do research to supplement that with the areas of your interest. And then the capstone project you are selecting. We have a hypothetical option now that we've offered this year based on feedback from last year. We have a hypothetical option for people who are not connected with the ecosystem or an idea for their project, so that we can give you some direction for your project. Or other people who are not connected to a project have partnered with people who are. So that's where Rudolf mentioned that he's partnering with someone from France who did not have a capstone project location. So we have a few different options for people who do not have connection to a project or a theme, but for most of the participants come in with an idea in mind or form it shortly after joining the program of a capstone project in a landscape that is most interesting to you. And what I always encourage people is to focus on the landscape or the regional area. And then very quickly in the program, we're going to tell you to pause your focus on the actual strategies and implementation steps. So some people come saying, I am interested in agroforestry with this tree species and cocoa production in this area of this place. And we will say, that's great, but let's focus on the place, and then the tools used in the program are going to guide you towards evaluating the full range of ecological and social dynamics happening in that place, the full range of potential strategies and land use interventions you could consider, and then you'll get to the point at which you're prescribing different or suggesting different land use interventions that make sense for that area. So come with a location in mind, but an open mind as to what one might do in that location. Does anyone else on the panel have anything to say about that subject of selecting your subject?
Just very quickly, Jillian chiming in. I obviously would advise going through the whole course syllabus because it's arranged in a way to give you discrete pieces of knowledge and how they go or interrelate to each other, as I mentioned earlier. And I also reiterating what I said, so I consider my expertise to be the social political ecology and economy side. But with the curated materials and the live sessions, I learned many other things that I wasn't very aware of during my work, and that greatly enriched my analysis and my research. Just wanted to put that on the table.
Celine. There's another question that says, is the program designed for people who are already involved or have previous knowledge of environmental issues? And so my quick answer to that is that it's a full range of people. Some people have a knowledge of environmental issues and some people don't. The fundamentals course is designed such that you don't have to come in with prior knowledge about the themes. We present pretty quickly the important themes that we want you to know. However, there are people who come and join the program with degrees in these subjects, or like Celine is an expert in these social aspects of her own right, and yet what the participants have communicated to us is that because of all these discrete modules that Celine has mentioned, one might be an expert in one area, but then the other 7 weeks of a course might bring in new elements for you, or case studies and examples from places that are not your specific country. And so we've never had a situation when someone came in and said, I already know all of this. And the program is so broad that it gives you the flexibility to either skip over some content that you already know very well and dig deep in the content that you don't. There's a question that says, I have heard from Rudolf that we can be partnered for the Capstone project because I'm living in West Europe. I'm very interested in joining a contextualized peer project in tropical forest. Is that possible? Thank you. Rudolf, do you want to answer how that process worked for you or is working?
Yes, it's very possible, and especially when you express your interest, because we have students also who wish to partner with others. And I would say that sometimes it helps if you are not, you don't remain within your, your backyard. You can learn something new And like I learned a lot from the student from France. She hasn't been in Kenya, but through literature review, actually it's like she knew more about the area than myself, just because of literature review. So I would encourage that, because essentially the concepts are meant to open your eyes. So if you do something slightly away from your daily work, that can even add value. So it's possible to partner, and that can be a very nice learning experience. Thank you.
Wonderful. I think we've addressed the questions. I'm looking through the chat to see if there's any that have not been addressed. Dawood says, would it be flexible to select a field area from my country? And as I mentioned, yes, absolutely. Select if you have a project or field area in mind that is of personal or professional interest to you, that is really great. So that would be wonderful. And as we mentioned, for those of you asking, we are recording this. We will post it to our YouTube channel. You can consult it afterwards, and you can also spread the word to any of your colleagues that might be interested in the program. So again, I'm going to put in the chat right now tropical certificate at yale.edu, which is the email address for the program. And I'll also put the page for admissions. We also just launched a bunch of testimonials on our website that you can take a look at, which further explain the participant perspective. And with that, I think we'll formally close the session. If you've asked a question and I didn't get to it, please write to us at the email and we're happy to address further or schedule a one-on-one call. So thank you again to our guests and to everyone logging in today. And we hope to see your application come through in the next few weeks. Bye-bye.
Bye.